Hi, guys. It's Hunter here with the Nourishing Emptiness podcast. I'm here with Zach, and this week is going to be about the calling of results last week and coming into Nats, and in particular, Canadian Nats coming up this weekend. But to start us off, Zach, how was your week?
It was pretty good, pretty uneventful, honestly. Recorded a thing with Jacob Lance about Azalea, so you can look out for that on the Righteous Gaming channel. I don't know if that'll come out before or after this, but that was my main thing this week. Otherwise, not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, and for me, it's just been schoolwork, Nats prep, uh, pretty much the same old. Trying to figure out what we were doing for Nats. Had a little mental breakdown when new LL'd because of how I expect it to shake up the meta, but we'll end up talking more about that when we get there. So this weekend, calling results. Let's uh, let's talk about that. Zach, do you have any thoughts just to bring us into this?
Um, I don't know. Do we want to talk about the new stuff first, or do we just want to talk about the general meta first? Or where are we at?
Let's talk about the event, how
Okay.
that went, and then we'll move on into new being gone and what that means.
All right. Well, I think that like the first thing that really drew my attention was like still how represented Florian is. I guess I expected him to take more of a hit than he did. He's still tied for the most represented deck, which I found like especially kind of unusual in Europe. Like when I think Europe, I think like really strong aggro players, the type of people who want to be playing like Azalea, Syndra, even Gravy, is the type of playstyle I think of. So I was kind of surprised to see like this much mid range is still like the prevailing thing that people want to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florian's just a really comfortable deck, and a lot of players who aren't like full-time grinding level pros are still looking at him and being like, "Hey, this was good during that season. They're a comfortable hero. They're fun." I think a lot of people just like playing him too, right?
That's
Like,
fair. He is fun.
just chill. It's like old him with half of the thought, and that's not a diss. That's an upside in this case.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Like, I do like that Florian is like a very, like you're gonna get the same thing every time. He's very like warrior esque in that regard, where like your games don't feel stressful. You're just kind of vibing, and you're like, I will
You, you don't
do
play
good
the amount of
number the
warrior
whole
I do.
time. Well, yeah, sure, sure. You know, maybe not Fang, but like it's like the classic two handed warrior like axe story.
Try
You
playing
know,
Dawnblade. Try playing Dawnblade and tell me your games aren't stressful.
just simply
Um,
bluff better, then you never have to
yeah.
stress.
Simply engage with your opponent and have them understand that bluffs are possible. You know how many
Nah.
games I've lost by trying to bluff and my opponent just doesn't even realize that it's possible that I could have something and doesn't register it as a bluff?
Call every bluff.
I
Easy.
remember one of my first major events, I was playing against someone who I think at this point is a fairly prolific player in Canada, and I blocked with an attack react in Dory versus Viserai. This is way back, like Uprising or Dynasty meta. I blocked with an attack react and then played uh, what's it called?
Like
Glistening
Warrior
Steel
Stone?
Blade.
Listen.
I played Glistening Steel Blade and attacked with a card in hand and two resources up or something because of Tunic, and they just blocked three. And I just sat there going like, "Are you insane?" I blocked with an attack react. That signal was so strong because I knew I couldn't beat 9 block. I just wanted to get 6 block out this turn and force the Viscerai onto a weak turn to get tempo back, and they just blocked 3, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm so angry." And I asked him about it after the game, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I you know couldn't afford to beat anything, so I'm like, fair, fair, but I'm like, why'd you block at all? I'm just So yeah, sometimes you get games like that where you try to be really clever with your opponent and like try and arsenal the second source of go again or something.
Well, it's the
And
classic adage of the best way to be like a genius is to just be a dumbass. You know, it's just how it is.
that's my go-to example for don't get overly tricky with your with your signals when you're trying to bluff. Um, yeah, so the event, lots of Florian. I think still a lot of Syndra. Admittedly, a lot less than Florian and Azalea, but a lot of Syndra, huge uptick in Verdance, and everything else sort of just trickles in after the top, what, like 8 heroes, which you would generally expect to be the top 8 heroes, I think.
Yeah, I think most people would agree that like Azalea, Florian, New Gravy, Syndra, Prism, Verdance, Arachne are like the eight or like the seven. And then after that, you can argue like, okay, Kano's kind of there, but he gets host by compliance, so he's like kind of getting pushed down. Kasai had like a bit of a come up at US Nats, but we didn't really see a whole lot of that. Vincent, I think, was like the big come up for this event specifically that I guess we haven't talked about.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. And going into day one, I don't remember the exact results. I think a Gravy went undefeated, and I'm not sure who else. But definitely a good showing still for the best gravies in the room, but as we'll see in conversion, not a good showing for gravy as a whole, which I think is still reasonable to expect. I think we're still in that spot where gravy's super hard to play and probably does have some bad matchups, especially now that people are likely teching for him. Um, and yeah, we only see 6 out of the 20 some 28 gravies making day two. Verdance with a 30% conversion with 7, Syndra at 30% with 8, and New at 45% with 13. So New clearly good into Syndra, good into Verdance. I think with very little required tech, you're good into Gravy. Not good into Florian. Florian there with 17% conversion with 6 copies. Prism into New, it's close, I think. I've been told it's very favored either way, but I'm just gonna say that means it's probably
Yeah,
close.
it's classic 90-90, you know.
Um, Azalea, 14% conversion. Horrific conversion for Azalea. Even worse than Florian, which I think is very weird, actually.
Uh,
I want to hear your thoughts on that, actually. Why
so
is Azalea at 14%?
I mean, it could be a lot of things. I mean, the first one is that like Azalea's strongest soldier isn't present. You know, people just aren't as lucky as Jacob. They can't flip as well. It's tough out here. But also, I think that like she does struggle with gravy specifically. So when there's a lot more gravy, even if the gravies aren't converting, if you hit them at a bad time, it can like skew your run. I think she also like can struggle with Prism. Though, like Jacob talking about that matchup, he's like, I think it's like another one of those like 90-90s where like one person just blows the other person out. So it could be a decent amount of that too. But I don't know. Like, I also would have expected it to not quite be like this bad. But I guess maybe Vincent was eating her alive here. I don't know. Like, we haven't gotten into the Vincent stuff, but like a lot of Vincents did really well day one, and like she's kind of like the anti aggro deck, right? Where you just set up a bunch of disruption with like overrate and mid range hands, and that sounds like something Azalea could maybe struggle with. So maybe like the rise of Vincent like signaled the fall there a little bit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think most prevalent too is just the 13 news, like the nearly 50% conversion rate on New.
Well, so that
Uh,
one's interesting though, because like I've heard from like Azalea and new players that the matchup is basically like 50-50. Like it's very close, one way or the other. So I don't feel like new being super represented should be that bad for Azalea. But I mean, obviously, I guess it could be. I mean, if it's a close matchup and the news just edged it out, that could be why the new conversion is that high.
was that New Horizons uh, or not New Horizons? Because
That was New Horizons, which
I know
also is the other
watching.
thing. Yeah, like the Azalea the top aided wasn't even on New Horizons. They were on Cross Wrap, so it could also be like a difference of philosophy in Azalea. Like people just brought a different version and it wasn't as good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable because that's what I saw in Canada, at least before US Nats, is if people were talking about or bringing Azalea, it was still cross wrap, and I was telling very skilled Canadian players about no, 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 you got to get on this like casino schizo Azalea with New Horizons, and it like really revitalizes your matchup spread. You just have to be insane to play it. Good conversion for Kano, 40%. Mario 23, Victor 43, Kasai 30, Vincent 30, and then a bunch of other smaller things. Is there anything, I guess, of note of the things that are at least on this list? The 10% puffin conversion.
1 in 11. One person
Yeah,
made it. Good for them.
good for them.
I don't know. Like when I've been playing a lot of Puffin this week. Actually, that's been like my side hustle, and the way it feels to me is very similar to like early stage Vinset, where it feels like your deck does something fundamentally strong, but it just doesn't do it consistently. So I mean, 1 in 10 feels about right to me, where the person was like, the deck is just working today, you know. That or maybe they cracked the code, but just not enough top eight. I don't know. But that's how it feels like to me right now. Is that the deck does do some fundamentally unfair, like strong things. It just can't do it reliably, which is also like where a lot of that tier of hero is at to me, where it's like same with Acilio, same with like kind of Kano nowadays, where it's just like yeah, you'll probably win the game where it works, but you might not win all the games, and that's kind of the issue.
And same with the Fang. Also,
Yeah, also.
1 out of 9 converting today too. We'll get more into it when we get to talking about Canadian Nats, but I'm on Fang, and I still think 90% of the decks we see are built wrong. And I'm going to go eat my words at Canadian Nats when I go 0-3 in CC against players who are not as good as me.
You know what?
Um,
Sometimes it be like that though.
Sometimes you bring bring a casino deck and the dealer is not doing what you want. Um, okay. So yeah, that's most of the weird conversion stuff. Let's break into talking about top eight a little bit. You've been talking big about Vincent. I don't think her conversion was insane. 30%, 3 out of 10. It's pretty expected conversion rate for a lot of decks that you see are like doing reasonably well. But two of them end up making the top eight, and did so in, I mean, seventh and eighth, to be fair. Not spectacular CC performances, not the nearly undefeated Gravy and Azalea, but two in top eight. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and so I think that like it was really impressive because end of day one, all three of the Vince sets were like top 20, if I recall. Like they were all at 6 points at the end of day one, I think. Um, and so I think that like I mean this is kind of just a symptom of Vince set, I guess, where like if people are unprepared, especially day one, you're running into people who probably like aren't the best of the best in the early rounds. Like Vincent can really prey on that. And especially if you're expecting like an aggro heavy format, like that's the type of thing. Like all these regions have like their own weird niche. Like Australia is always the dash region. That's where all her LOL points come from. To me, Europe is like the super aggressive region. Um, and so I feel like Venza was actually probably a pretty good pick for this. I want to see if like she can continue on this trajectory because I do think she has like a lot of tools to deal with the problematic stuff in the meta right now. Like Mauve Skies for Gravy can help a lot there. She has like a million spell void for all the wizards that she just incidentally has. I think that her Prism matchup is like okay, though that one's kind of weird. And obviously she's good into the aggro deck. So like her only real problems were New and Florian. And if both of them, or I guess if New is leaving and Florian is getting kind of pressed down a little bit, maybe not like completely out of the meta. Obviously, he's still like the most represented deck, but he's getting pushed down a little bit. Less people are bringing him because of like all the bad matchups that are in the meta. Then I could see Vincent actually rising up a bit here, and I think that she's actually decently well positioned.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that generally makes sense. Like, I think it has a good matchup into Gravy. I think it has reasonable matchups into the like little slower aggro decks, things like Azalea, rather than just full gas. But still a little skeptical on Vinset. I think to a certain extent it can be a skill check for your opponent, same way that a lot of decks are. And I think it's incredibly difficult to play. You have
Yeah,
to
I mean
be
that's the
very,
biggest
very
problem with
proficient.
Vincent, and always has been, is that like there's maybe 10 people that can play her well. Like, that is just hard.
Yeah, and at least for going forward, I think you should always be afraid of the people who know how to play Vinset. But I wouldn't I wouldn't say like, hey, if I'm prepping for Nats in a week or two, should you swap to Vinset? And the answer is no. If you're prepping for Nats in a week or two, you should play Syndra. You should play uh Azalea will be gone, so I don't know, Guardian Warrior
Yeah, I
if you
don't
have
think
like
people
no
should
idea what
like.
to do.
Yeah, I don't think people should be picking up new decks at this point. But I do think the people who have been playing Vincent are in a good place now, with how the
Yeah,
meta
I
has
think
evolved a
so.
little bit here.
I think they're in a reasonable place. I would not go and put her in top tier yet, but tier 1.5 definitely like dark horse for any event for sure. Okay, so that's the Vincent part of this top eight, but now the rest of the top eight who actually got there on matchup rather than on breakers. The top six we have New, who ends up taking down the entire event, Prism, two Syndras, and Azalea, and with a record of 11-1, Gravy Bones in first.
Yeah,
Where are we at on this?
I think that like if you showed me this top eight ahead of the event, with the exception of like the two Vincets, I would say this top eight, it looks like really normal. Um, like I expected at least one Gravy. I expected a couple Syndras. I expected like an Azalea or two, a New or two, and like probably a Prism. The Vincent stuff was weird, but we already talked about that. I think that Syndra, like recovering from the U.S. Nats blowback, is really unsurprising. I think people really blew out of proportion how bad she was. I think people just didn't bring good decks to U.S. Nats. Like, it was so many of like the red line lists that were like beat face really hard, get my like chest triggers, and just like tempo people out. But if you like pivot to the combo version, your matchups into like Gravy and a lot of the other decks just get better, and I think it solves a lot of the problem. And I assume that's what kind of happened here. I guess I didn't really look at like the Syndra
Absolutely
things,
not.
but oh, okay. Well, you know what? Shows what I
I'm
know.
gonna make you eat your
All
words
right.
and look
Well, you
at
know
both
what?
of the top
Maybe we
eight.
just play red line anyway, and we just play better because U.S. Syndras are bad. You know that could also be it. But like, I don't know. I
Uh,
still don't buy this fucking red line Syndra shit. I'm gonna be honest. I just play blues, please. Like spreading flames is so good. Please, I'm begging, play some blues.
yeah, so looking at the list, they're fairly standard red line. One list has three warmongers and three yellow brands. Otherwise, just straight red line. I'm quickly checking it over to see if there's anything insane in it, but I don't think there is. The other one is likewise on one salt, one tenacity, no yellow brands, and then just two concealed blades and three throw daggers for the blue slot. Yeah, you want to talk about things that Vincent can prey on? This no AB Syndra seems very reasonable for that. So I will say the 5 blue list is on 3 spreading flames, and the 3 blue list is on 2 spreading flames.
Okay,
So
okay. So at least we are
I,
playing like the combo package, even if we're probably like a little blue light for it. That's fine.
a little, just a little blue light,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
it's smidge.
a smidgen. I'm assuming that either the plan is into very slow matchups like Florian and Verdance, you just arsenal the spreading flames and wait to draw blue, or perhaps it's just the idea of you're just going to use your chest for all of your resources on that turn, or you wait to combo it with Wrath of Retribution or something like that. But yeah, interesting. Still very red heavy. Uh, still favoring just the consistency of raw numbers rather than playing playing good blues. I really the Throw Dagger is such a good card. Uh,
Yeah, I
and
don't
so is
know. It's like it's
Warmongers.
so weird to me that like Cinders are so blue at first, because especially in this meta, like a Warmongers to me feels like it's so good right now. Like it hits Azalea, it hits Gravy, it hits Mario, it hits other things to a lesser extent. Like it just feels like a card you would want to be playing in Syndra. And then
Yeah,
like Throw Dagger, a lot of people are cutting shelters. It's like falling out of favor for other D reacts. It's just like, man, we're really just not playing any of just the good cards. Like not even counting the fact they're blue. The cards are just good right now, and they also happen to be blue in block three. And it's just not good enough for Syndra players. I don't get it. Like I really feel like this deck should be like one of the best decks in the game if people just played blues.
yeah. On the shelter mention, I'm just checking every deck in top 8, and yeah. So one Vincent is on 3 shelter, one Vincent's on 0. The new is only on 2. Both of the Syndras are on 3 shelter because they're clearly very aware of each other. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that Azalea and Prism are on no shelter, and the Gravy is not on any shelters. Yeah, seems like Throw Dagger is a good card. I get it. It's a pain to plan your turns around random draws, and I understand the more blues you play, the more likely you are to brick on that random draw. But sometimes you don't need to to hit the perfect thing. If all of the blues you have in your deck are playable from Arsenal, which they all are, with the exception of Warmongers, uh, it's okay. That's my opinion, at least. Um, okay, so moving on from that Syndra discussion, uh, if we talk about the results, we saw a Gravy beating a Vincent, which I think is surprising,
Um,
given that the Vincent seems to want to target Gravy.
I don't know. I don't think it's that surprising because the Gravy has turn order. So it's like Gravy getting to go first is obviously very good for Gravy. Vincent getting to go second is obviously very bad for Vincent. I think like if you flip the turn order, I could see it going differently. I don't know. I think that that's like a big contributing part of it though.
Okay. We had Syndra beat Prism. I think it's an unfavored matchup, but it's well, I think that's a pretty unfavored matchup, right? I think a lot of people do not want to sit down against a Prism. I'm looking and I'm seeing 3 Paupers in the Syndra list, so maybe just good draws. Maybe Prism bricked out a little bit. Maybe they got Spreading Flames off and just killed her.
Yeah, it's a sad thing about not being able to see all of these calling games. It's like we just kind of have to guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like unfavored for Sintra, but like again, when you have turn selection, it helps. And like, I don't know, you probably just choose to go second. Probably didn't get hit turn zero, and then just was like slightly faster. I can see it.
Mm-hmm. Syndra lost to the new. It's not very surprising. And then we saw a very interesting game between Azalea and Vincent, which ended up going in Azalea's favor. Moving on to the semifinals, the Syndra beat down the Gravy, which is mostly expected. It's a lot closer than people think, but still Syndra favored. and this Syndra was not on Warmongers, so without the tech there as well. And then New taking down Azalea in the battle for who was allowed to try to LL against Syndra in what we both assume is favored for either player who wins there. And then the finals, just quickly touching on the finals.
Man,
What a
it,
cacophony of
oh
stuff.
no, it really just felt like both decks wanted to lose. I don't know, like it did not look good.
Yeah, I think analyzing the game, I think there were a few points where certain players made mistakes that could have ended the game sooner. But at the end of the day, both decks just crap themselves, sitting at 1 HP apiece. Syndra drawing completely, like,
Just the
legitimately
worst
non-playable
hand,
hands.
yeah, the worst hand the deck could produce on like 3 occasions. I think it was
Yeah,
awful.
then going back to the new and just looking at the new, like, come on, you have 2 daggers and they're at 1. Surely we can present a hand that's lethal here, and they're not able to do it.
Yeah, no, it
And
was very, very awkward at the end of
it,
that game.
eventually New takes it down, and New is LL'd. And
What a way to go.
what a way to go. Part the Mistveil is gone.
We have officially departed the Mistveil. Thank
Yeah.
God.
Good riddance, I guess.
Yeah, so kind of
I,
Loki
I,
same.
I
Yeah.
think I think New was a healthy part of the metagame in this. If it weren't for Siren's Call,
Siren's
I
Call is
think,
easily the most toxic card that deck
yeah,
has. So like, it might not be the strongest, but it like definitely to me feels the most problematic. Where it's just like, all right, take your pitch card, go fuck yourself.
yeah. I'm not a Guardian player though, so I understand that that is not a fun interaction. But I think of the Mistveil heroes, as evidenced by her taking the longest to LL, I think New was the most reasonable. Uh, Enigma's just overrate, really good deck, and we don't have to rehash Bond's Zen and then just his slow limp along
He was
to
still like
LL.
a fully competent aggro deck that just people got so burnt out of that I feel like they didn't play at the end. Like I don't know, that the limp out still felt so weird to me because he still felt like he was good. But I
It
guess other
was, it
aggro
was
decks were just like slightly better. I don't know.
not as good as post Armory deck Aurora,
Yeah.
not like
Yeah, you can't
not
compete
good
with like
enough in
Viscerai
Deforian.
either. Yeah,
Yeah, can't
yeah.
compete with full power Viscerai. So, Rosetta comes in, steals the show from him a little bit at the end, but yeah, Mistveil's gone, New is gone, and let's take a moment before we sort of blending into talking about Nats. But what the heck does New leaving do to the meta?
I'm not gonna lie, I thought you were gonna say let's take a moment of silence, and I was gonna be like, I absolutely not for them. Are you kidding me?
No, no, just let's. What does this mean for the meta?
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I think that there's like a lot of decks that New was keeping out that can kind of rise up now. The first one I think of is like Acilio. I think that this guy is already on the come up, and this makes his life a lot easier. Um, and I mean, there's others as well, but like I don't know how this is gonna like affect things because a lot of decks that are like gate by New are gonna like come up, and I don't know how that's gonna push other things down. Because I felt like she was very load bearing. I guess is like the easiest way to put it.
of course. Um, New and her load-bearing stripper pole.
It do be like that.
Yeah. It does feel to me, Acilio is the thing I'm number one afraid of. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of other decks. Victor comes to mind. I'm trying to think if there's other like super blue dependent strategies outside of Guardian that she was gatekeeping, but anything that requires 5 card hands in any regularity. So maybe she was actually gatekeeping stuff like Riptide a
I mean,
little
it
bit, who we
it, it
did
also
see bubble
does.
at the event.
Yeah, yeah, it also does a decent amount of work for Florian, because now he's not gonna have like the fatigue himself issue as much anymore, because he can just play good blues now. Like there are so many blues that Florian just wouldn't play that like might see play now, like stuff like Dread Triptych and like just other blue attacks that are like good, but New could like abuse you too hard for. So you just played like these total dog water blues in its slot. Like maybe we see those come back.
Maybe we see what is it? Maybe we see the other assassins play some new blues or something. Um, maybe Jarl plays real Guardian blues, even though I think just having elemental blues is better in him. Yeah, I think I assume New was. I've been told New is a bad matchup for Vincent too, so there you go. Vincent, Acilio, Syndra, Azalea. Azalea's to a little bit of a lesser extent. Verdance had an awful New matchup.
Yeah, I think this like
He-
Verdance is like really scary to me right now because it feels like Gravy is the one thing left in the meta that's like really keeping her down. But Gravy is like so targetable by like other things in the meta and is being targeted that I feel like Verdance is just gonna kind of get out of hand here pretty soon.
Maybe. I think Verdance is a very hard deck to play, deceptively hard to play, um, compared to what you'd expect from just an Earth mid range hero. And yeah, I think her Gravy matchup could be better. I think there's tech she can bring that brings it close to like 45-50%. And I don't think there's a ton that Gravy can do to like tech for his matchups. I might end up being very wrong about that, but I think it's more of a skill diff that decides your Gravy matchups rather than specifically what cards you're bringing. Uh, for not all of them, but certainly these slower matchups. Um, yeah, Wizard should have a good time because I know Kano didn't like playing into news either,
Kano new
and
matchup was like really weird. It like I'm pretty sure it was unfavored for Kano because like AB3 Spell Void 3, but I have heard like a decent amount of Kano saying that like they had some success just comboing twice because the new numbers were just like too small sometimes.
yeah, it's certainly possible. But new can disrupt that too
Yeah,
in
yeah, for
weird
sure. Like
ways.
I don't
So
think it was good for Kano, but I don't think it was like as bad as it was for like Verdance.
no, I don't think so. And then yeah, sad day for Warriors because we lose our best matchup and a deck that was holding down a lot of our less good matchups, such as Acilio and Kano and probably Verdance. I haven't really gotten a ton of practice with anything other than Fang into Verdance. Fang
Depending on the
Verdance is
warrior, also Vincent.
fine. Yeah, Vincent's weird because even as Fang, I still feel like I win the games where she doesn't draw the nuts.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I beat one in Nats. It's not impossible, but I do think Vincent, especially with the die roll, is like really hard a lot of the time.
yeah, I think it depends on how good they are, probably.
But yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's warrior, right? It always kind of depends on how good your opponent is at blocking.
well, not just blocking. I think it comes down to like them understanding exactly how to board into Fang.
Yeah,
Um, we'll touch on that too when we talk about Canadian Nats, and I go over Fang and how I think he's looking into the meta. The biggest thing for me, though, as we mentioned, Acilio on the up, and probably a few other aggro decks. Maybe we start seeing Katsu be playable. Um, maybe Brutes come back a little bit. I don't know if New was a bad matchup for Brutes, but I know they play good blues, so it might have been.
from my understanding, like KO is the only one I know anything about. the KO new matchup was like slightly KO favored. It's like a 55-45 or something like that. Um, so I don't think that like I would be really surprised if the thing gating brute is assassin. Like from my understanding, it's just Florian is doing like slightly big number stuff better at the moment, and that's more the issue.
Maybe that as well. Uh, okay, so we've touched on it a fair bit during this, but takeaways going into national season with New gone, with Gravy on the up, Syndra and Verdance looking to be at the top of the meta, Florian still at the top of the representation, but doing terribly. Where would you go if you wanted to play into or beat this meta?
Um, I don't know. If I was playing US Nats again tomorrow and you told me New was gone, I feel like I would probably bring Kasai. I think that she's the one that's like flying under the radar right now the most. And I think that the deck is still really strong. I think it has like good Azalea matchup. I think its Gravy matchup is fine. Good into Syndra. Good into Prism in my opinion. Verdance is playable. Like your Florian matchup's kind of sus, but like it's doable. That's where my mind goes. I would say still play Fang, but my issue with Fang is I just like we cannot find a Fang list that doesn't just brick sometimes. It feels like Kasai has that problem less to me. I don't know.
Yeah. It feels like that until you play it, and then like you don't brick, but you also just like you realize, oh, I drew these cards in the slightly wrong order, and now I can't Blood on her hands this game, and
Kasai
it's
really just does need a card that tutors blood. Like, give
yeah.
us just like something. I don't know.
The answer is supposed to be velocity, I think, but it can be difficult. Um, yeah, I guess in the same vein, tomorrow for Canadian Nats, because we're recording this on the Friday, I would love to be on Kasai. However, and I suppose this is as good a time for this tangent as any, I don't own an Eye of Ophidia. I don't know anyone who owns an Eye of Ophidia. I don't own a Treasures, and I've never seen a Treasures or Riches, whatever, the new Fable. Eye of Ophidia is going for close to 800 Canadian right now. Riches is going for 400 last time I checked. Might have gone up, might have gone down.
Yeah, and for U.S.
Uh,
people, that's like 600 U.S. for I and like 350 U.S. for Riches. Last I checked, so like it's basically a grand if you want to pick up both fables.
yeah, my Kasai deck with very like no, literally no intentional bling other than I have like cold foil gold tokens and stuff like that. No bling is already like $1,500, and I'm not putting another grand into it, even though I in Kasai not absolutely required, but definitely the best 60th card in the deck. And Riches, I think, is 100% required for Kasai at this point. Now, I will say, as a caveat, Riches being $400 does not upset me that much. High Seas is underprinted. High Seas is highly in demand. It's currently being played in a lot of Pirate Heroes and Victor, and a lot of people are trying it in other places like Prism, so it's highly in demand, and we are getting more High Seas. There will be more of this card put into circulation. I personally think demand for it will die down over time. Just to, for context, the gravy list that did well at this event was not even playing it, and I think I've come to the conclusion that that's probably right. It's essentially just a copy of Organian Tome that pitches for yellow, which hey, that's great, but it's not like the be all end all. It just says cycle a card through your deck. Your deck is 59 cards, and sometimes you can't block. which can be a problem in Gravy. Um, and of course, it can be a problem in Marlin too, with ponders and stuff like that. So I'm still on the train that I really don't think this card is played outside of Puffin, Victor, and Kasai, and I guess maybe Prism. I'm not sold on it yet. Uh, yeah, it's hard. Like I said, I'd want to be on Kasai, but I don't have $1,200. Even if I could find an Eye and a Riches for sale, I'm not paying $1,200 for them, and I think that's a problem. I think it's a problem that I have decided not to play Gravy or Kasai, despite having every other card for them available to me except for Eye of Ophidia and Riches, because I feel like I'm losing. I feel like I'm losing like 4%, maybe 5% matchup spread on Kasai by not having both. And I feel like not having Eye and Gravy is like 2%. Like that card, Eye of Ophidia, to me, is so insanely good in Gravy Bones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that like we're at the point in Fab that like people thought that we might be at with Icelander, where like the generic fables are really good. You don't need them, but they do give you like 2 to 5%, and there's just not enough of them. And I really think LSS either needs to reprint them or just get them out of here, because it's really problematic that like as someone who owns all of them, even that like these really rare, expensive cards are playable. Like I don't think fables are cards that should be designed to be played at the highest level. Like they should just be cool collector's pieces, in my opinion.
I can go both ways on it. I just think there needs to be, like, I am fine with Fables being playable so long as there's a long-term plan to make them available. I will pay $250 for a Fable. I think that is
Yeah,
a
that's
lot of
fine.
money, but I am a competitive player, and I understand that sometimes I gotta fork out money. Like I paid $450 for my codexes, I paid $100 a pop for my blade flurries or whatever. Like I get it. I'm not. I would I rather everything be $30? Yeah, I would. Obviously, I'm a student too. I don't have a ton of money, but uh, I understand that cards are going to cost a lot of money, and I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with $800, and I'm not willing to spend $400 on a card that I think is worth 200.
Yeah, and it's like
So
to me like a one of in your deck that's very strong, like 250 is like the cap, you know? Because that equates to like a playset of CNCs, right? This is a playset of that equivalently strong generic, right? That's to me like where it should cap out at. When it starts getting to be like over double that, like Eye of Ophidia, where it's at like 600 US, it's like this is untenable, especially when it's being run in more and more decks now. Like the price isn't going to go down. At least I don't think it is, because like
I
it's
think
just too scarce.
I think too the big thing here for me is before, when Eye of Ophidia was played, it was played in stuff like Kano, where it had a very, very pronounced downside. Now it is being played in Kasai, for example. We'll start with Kasai because it's a very clear one-to-one. I was lucky enough to open a Heart of Fyendel within 3 weeks of playing the game from whatever history pack it came in. But it's, I don't know. Did it come white border and history pack? Because I don't have a
No,
white
it
border,
wasn't
but I don't
white
have a
border. I
cold
don't think.
foil either. So I'm just fortunate to open a heart, and at least perceptually, it could always just be a perception issue. I have won so many games by owning this heart of Fyendel. There have been a number of games where I don't genuinely do not believe there's any chance I would have won on Dorinthia or on Kasai without gaining 1 to 2 to 3 life over the course of a game. Of course, that doesn't happen every game, and there are a small fraction of games that you lose because you have a zero block. But the way that a lot of those decks worked, you either can't afford to block out, because if you block out with your whole hand, the game is almost always over. Not always, but almost always over. Or uh, you just don't, like, you get more value by keeping it a lot of times. This was a big thing in Dawnblade, and why I always played it in Dawnblade is your easy matchups are the matchups where you're ahead in life. Your hard matchups are the ones where you're behind in life, and you can never afford to block out in Dawnblade because you lose your counters. With the very notable exception of, like, you would block with 4 cards into Briar and then pop Courage of Blade Hold and swing Dawnblade twice. Um, and in that matchup, you can just board out a heart because that's not how the matchup plays out. Otherwise, it has been genuinely the best one of I could have ever asked for in any deck. And Eye of Ophidia feels like that on steroids in Kasai.
Yeah, I agree.
I will give a caveat just because I mentioned it with the riches. There was no Eye of Ophidia in the gravy list. That went 11-1. And I don't think Eye of Ophidia is necessary for gravy to work. But I personally, having done my testing, just I have a pet peeve about playing suboptimal versions of decks, and Eye of Ophidia is so good in gravy for winning your hard matchups that I just didn't want to play without it. Um, I think we've said pretty much what we need to say about this. My conclusion is not necessarily to ban fables, though I think at some point you might be able to, like, put them on rotation or something like that. Say, like, after 5 years, this fable's no longer legal, something like that. Just because they'll still hold collector's value, they'll still be playable in LL. Maybe they'll still be playable in Blitz and stuff like that. Um, that's possible. Functional reprints are possible. I don't know what LSSS is going to do with these, but I do not want to live in a world where 3 years from now, Eye of Ophidia is a $1,200 card, and even if I own one at that point, I'm going to be angry because new players are going to be priced out of playing optimal
Well,
decks.
yeah, exactly. And like the big issue for me is like every deck is starting to feel like it has the prism problem, where it's like new players, the gateway to entry to getting an optimal prism deck is so high, because like you have to fork over $500 on like Light of Soul library, and now it feels like a lot more decks are trending in that direction, where like if you want to play optimally, you have to get a Fable, maybe two, and that just feels problematic to me, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think that's a healthy spot for CC to be in the long run. For now, I would, like, if I were LSS, I would, despite my personal disgust for this, I would still sit and wait on it because I is obviously going to spike. They knew, they almost certainly knew that I was going to spike with this set because it is 3 heroes that synergize very well with Eye of Ophidia. Um, it might come back down once the hype dies down, once people figure out where they actually want their list to be. And hell, I'm open to being horrifically wrong and having it not be optimal in any of these lists. But for now, that doesn't seem to be the case. And at the very least, with Kasai needs riches. Riches makes this deck powerful in the way it currently is. At least into your worst matchups, like stuff like Florian, stuff where, like,
Yeah.
you need to generate gold. Uh, Riches is a huge buff, and to put it in context, how much of a buff it is, I was so down bad for guaranteed gold generation in that matchup. I was playing Imperial Ledger during PQ season before I swapped to Fang.
That was sure a time to be testing Florian into Kasai.
It, like, the matchup was playable if you
It
saw an
helped.
Imperial
Yeah,
Ledger.
no, it did in fact help, but God was it bad. Like
It was awful. Wow. Let's trade 2 action points in this action point constrained deck to make 1 gold. Um. Okay. So enough of that tangent. That was quite the side tangent. Um. What I wish I could play Kasai tomorrow, but I don't own the cards for it. And what would I play going into Nats going forward? Because I don't think it would be Kasai. I think it's like really big warrior cope. I think the answer might be Victor. Uh, with a big asterisk of can you figure out the gravy matchup to be at least like 40%? But I think,
Everything that I have heard from Guardian players has been real pessimistic about that.
or well, I guess there's 2 things. Either you figure out gravy, or you think the meta's gonna screw with gravy, or you don't think gravy's gonna show up in strong enough numbers. I don't know. I think Victor is probably very well positioned. I'm going out on a limb. I am not a Victor player. I do not know his matchup spread perfectly, but my assumptions are good into Azalea, reasonably good into Florian, terrible into Gravy, good into Syndra, good to great into Prism, uh, reasonable into Verdance, reasonable to good into Assassin, really good into Kano so long as you're on like a fast build, and I personally think he's losing into Warrior, but he's not super losing into Warrior, and you can definitely have sideboard plans for it. And the good thing is I think the sideboard plans that are good into Warrior are the same sideboard plans that are good into Gravy, with a couple things that are different. So, and good into Acilio, presumably.
I, on the topic of Victor into Acilio, I watched a game at Armory the other day where a Victor put a, or sorry, no, this was a Yarl, but I guess the same kind of concept applies. Where like the Acilio was IPing himself on full combo in hand for like 3 turns while being disrupted. Finally got to play full combo, and then the Guardian just played Cranial Crush, and the Acilio could block it with like 2 sigils on board and just like conceded.
Very
Uh,
nice.
yeah, no, I think that one's probably Victor favored. Yeah, though I do think that like the Kano matchup is actually like you can still just die there. Um,
Absolutely.
I'm
But I
not
think
actually
you're,
convinced the Florian matchup is like super good for Victor either. I
yeah,
think that like the Florian can get fatigued, but like generally the Florian is still doing better number. So maybe with like better blues and like good tight play, the Florian is like still favored. I'm not sure how decks change, but I don't think
the
that it's like
Florian
that far.
matchup is something I'm completely unaware of. Like, if you told me that Victor was like 10% into it because it's just like deterministic for Florian to do more numbers, then I'd be like, okay,
It
yeah,
was
okay.
like pretty solid for Florian before Germinate ban. After Germinate ban, like you could get fatigued, and it was like a bit rough. But I think that like if you're playing like the CMH stuff and you have like better blues now, you're probably fine. I think that it's probably like a pretty tight matchup nowadays. Though I haven't really been playing Florian since Germinate got banned.
Yeah, I think the Warrior, the Kano, the Gravy matchups, I think obviously you can use D-Reacts, not D-Rig. Obviously you can use your Clash cards into Warrior, but I think the Go Again package that you need to beat Gravy, that you need to beat Kano, is also the route you need to take to beat Warrior. And that's been my experience in the matchup. I'm 100 times more afraid of a Victor who presents a Sledge or an Anathos and just does not block the entire game and tries to swing 16 damage a turn than I am one that just shows up with a small hammer and says, "Oh, I'm going to gain 8 might off of my cast homes," and I'm like, "Okay, did you draw all 3 in the first 6 turns? Because if you didn't, you're going to lose."
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I had a game against a Victor, playing Fang at Armory like a couple weeks ago, where I got CNC pummeled for 15 into 16 on back-to-back turns, and then spinaled for 13 with pummel, I think, in like the first 4 turns of the game, and still won. Life totals were
Damn.
like 32 to 8, and it's like, yeah, the victor just like gasses himself, and Fang just does good number. Like that, you basically just need to not run out of gas as the victor in that matchup, I think.
Yeah, like yeah, the way I see that, way I've played that matchup as Kasai, Dory, and Fang all feel very much predicated on Victor just having a clash on every turn of the game and then sending 12 plus damage every turn. Um, if they can do that, they definitely win. But if they can't do that, and I'm sure Victor players can attest to the fact that the deck does not always do what you want it to do, uh, I I have only lost like 2 Victor games on any warrior, and it's mostly come down to shenanigans. So we'll see. Maybe it's a little different now with riches just being a pot of greed in the deck. Could just add the extra consistency they need, but could also just brick another one of their clashes. So unclear there. But yeah, I think Victor would be my pick, at least as a dark horse going into this weekend, because I think if you have the sideboard space to be good into aggro while bringing a go again package for your slow matchups, I think you're a real scary deck. Even if that go again package is small attacks, right? Even if it's Scar for a Scar or something similar. Doesn't matter into Warrior, doesn't matter into Kano, and you can't clash into Gravy. So I think Victor players just have to get off their high horse and, and play some small attacks, you know? Um, yeah. Okay, so last topic for the day, Canada Nats. I mentioned before I'm playing Fang. The tournament format is very standard for large Nats that aren't US Nats, 3CC, 3 draft, 3 draft, 3CC, and then cut to CC top 8. I mentioned last week that the general way to do well at Canadian Nats I've found is to just XO the first 3 rounds of CC and then X2 draft and pray you get there in the last 3 rounds against the best players in the country. Um, that's my hope. I think I mentioned not wanting to play Fang because it's one of the few decks that I feel confident bringing that I don't feel confident 3-0ing the first 3 rounds of CC on. Not because of bad matchups necessarily, but because the deck can crap itself and just fail to function. And I'm still very aware of that. I had a brief stint where I considered doing Hatchet Story once New LL'd because I wanted to respond to the meta getting faster, which I think it will. And I think Kasai or Hatchets would be better into aggro decks, but I don't think Hatchets is quite there. I don't have time to do enough testing to check if Hatchets is there, but just playing it, despite going and doing really well at my armory with it, I'm unconvinced by its prospects into a well-oiled Syndra or a Florian in particular, Verdance. I have no clue how you ever beat an Acilio who doesn't draw like crap, stuff like that.
To be fair, I feel that way on just about every deck into Acilio, where it's just like, all right, he drew the thing and I have died, and he didn't draw the thing and I have won.
At least, so the difference for me is at least on Fang, I can put them on a 4-turn clock. If I'm on Hatchets, I could put them on a 4-turn clock,
Yeah, it's
but
definitely slow for sure.
probably a 6-turn clock.
Yeah,
Um, you have to draw very well for it to be a 4-turn clock. That's my thought. I didn't, like I said, didn't really get to test it. I I dropped the idea fairly fast when I was just sitting there going like, there's too much unknown about this, and I'm almost certain that Kasai would be better just because of its matchup into Verdance and Kano, not Kano, Verdance and Florian would be better. And as we saw, people are still bringing Florian. I still expect people to bring Florian, and I think Fang has a very good Florian matchup. So, yeah, I'm on Fang. Um, go over quickly the things that I want to see and the things I don't. I would love to see other warriors, gravy bones, Florians, even Verdants. I'm fine seeing Verdants. I like Guardians. I still haven't lost to Riptide. I know that Riptide's supposed to be like 90% into warriors because all of his traps work all the time, but just, I don't know. You just block his arrows and eat the traps and just say okay.
I don't know.
At least into aggro Riptide. Maybe mid-range Riptide is awful.
Yeah, no,
I do
I
not have
think
them.
at the very least, like as Fang, mid-range Riptide is pretty abysmal. Um, on other warriors, you can kind of just like not react ever and fatigue him, but you can't really do that on Fang because your daggers swing for one, so he just actually
Yeah,
fatigues you instead.
yeah, and that's more or less where I expect that to be. Um, and I mentioned if there's any deck that I could bring and I would want to see Acilio, I think it's Fang. I think I'd rather see Acilio as a Fang than as a Gravy or a Kasai, which were my two other big options. So yeah, I think Fang's Wizard matchup, controversially, is the best of the three. I mean, Gravy's Kano
Low
matchup
bar,
and Verdant's matchup
pretty
are better, but
pretty low bar to clear.
well, Gravy should do well into Kano and Verdance based on our
Yeah,
understanding,
yeah,
but
no, Gravy does all right, but
I think his
I meant the
Acilio matchup
warriors
is
is a bit of a low bar to clear.
yeah. Warrior Wizard matchups are bad, so I've just taken the approach of just kill them. And if you build the Fang deck right, you can normally play no fealty into Verdance. And while they spend half their game trying to scour your fealty, you're just sitting there playing not great turns, but good enough turns that when they take a turn off every 3 turns to do 0 damage and set you back on fealty, that you can sort of just win on tempo. Um, I don't think I'll be beating Majin Bay. Obviously, he's not playing in Canadian Nats, but I have no doubts that like the best Verdances in the world have a winning matchup there. But I don't play to beat the best players in the world, or at least I don't build decks to beat the best player in the world because I'm not that good. So I'd rather just have a deck that could high roll them, which Fang can definitely high roll anything in the room, uh, nearly as well as a Kano or a Vinset or a Prism with Library turn 0. And just otherwise, people will make mistakes, a lot of mistakes I've found. And I want to be able to capitalize on that with a reasonably fast deck that is not going to be targeted. And based on my experience, almost no one has any clue how to play into, especially because our builds are very different than the ones you normally see running around.
Yeah, I think that most Fangs play lists that are like very similar to how Mara builds, and so like I don't know, it's very easy to take people off guard as a Fang that is not playing like mega red line.
Yeah, I think so. I
People
think
don't
a lot of
expect your off turns to be like as good as they are, basically.
yeah, and I think a lot of people will be surprised by the tech and matchup spread that at least I believe the deck to have based on internal and Talishar testing.
Mm.
So we'll see. Could be horribly wrong, and I could also be entirely right and draw horribly because boy, this deck can do that. It's got it's got every problem under the sun when it comes to inconsistency with drawing in its short matchups. So we shall see. by the end of the weekend. Also, I could just bomb draft, which hasn't happened yet at Nats, but there's always a first day, and this draft format's really hard. I'm sort of counting on the fact that the people who go 3-0 in CC once again have no idea how to draft, like every other year I've played at Canadian Nets, where I've gone in with literally no draft prep and X2'd. This time I'm actually on draft prep. Hope I can X2.
Nice.
Okay. Anything else you want to say or add?
I guess while we're on the topic of Canadian Nats, how do you feel about not getting drafted in the top 33 of the Snake Draft despite top 8ing last year?
I don't think anyone knows who I am, and I'm fine with that. Like, I have self confidence, and for context, Mask of Momentum posted a Twitter post, and it was shared with me by our team of them snake drafting people who were most likely to win and top Canadian Nats. Um, and I wasn't on that list.
uh, Drama
Oh,
alert! Drama alert!
yeah. No, I'm not super active in the community. Not the Canadian community. Like, I'm not someone who's posting a ton of content on YouTube or Discord or Reddit or like any other platform that people consume content on. So there's that. I don't have any big finishes aside from top 8ing last year at Nats. And while I think people like local in Ontario know who I am and they tend to respect me as a competent player, uh, I don't think that necessarily extends to the wider world because I don't travel to callings or worlds or stuff like that generally. And that doesn't bother me at all. Like, really,
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I would be flabbergasted if I was on this list.
I don't know.
Like,
Like, I get like not being near the top of it, but there is a certain amount like where it gets towards the bottom where I'm like, okay, we're literally just like picking people that I mean, personally, I've never heard of some of these people. I guess
well, neither have I,
maybe
but
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's
So it
also
feels
fine.
like I don't know. It feels like we're picking like the big names at the top, and then it's like uh people's friends towards the bottom, which is all these
Maybe
lists always go. But
I don't.
I don't know. It's just like to me, if I was doing this list and I was like, I need to pick 10 people, and I only know like 15 people from Canada. I would the first thing I would do is look at who won last year and like look at the top 8. That's like the first thing I would do. So that's why it was just like a little bit funny to me because I'm like, as someone who has made these lists uninformed before, like and just like had to do it for content or whatever, uh, I would like immediately default to just pick whoever did well last year.
I mean that's fair, but I think they did that for the most part. Like, I see Sunny made the list, and I don't think Sunny would have ever made one of these lists prior to winning last year.
I don't know.
I
I
think
think Sunny's like decently well known just as like a good ninja player because he travels a lot.
okay, fair enough. Um, I don't know if I can pronounce his last name, but Michael Metallo or something to that effect. I think he also top 8'd last year, and I don't see him on this list, and he's a much more prolific player than me. So maybe he's not showing up this year. Maybe he has something else going on, and they know that, and that's why he's not on this list. But like, I'm gonna make complaints about like good players not being on this list. I'm. It's not starting with my name. Trust me. Like, there are a lot of great players in Canada, and while I like to personally believe that I am one of them, and I genuinely believe that I can perform well in contrast to them, I don't think it's the same thing as like prolificness. That's not really a word, but I think a lot of the players towards the top of this list are very prolific Canadian players. I think a lot of the ones at the bottom are some of them I've heard of, some of them I haven't, but likely to be either friends or just people who aren't in Ontario. Like, I don't know a lot of Canadian players who aren't from Ontario. I think the only one who I know for sure is Yuki, and she is pick one in this list. unsurprising.
Yeah,
So
no, I don't think anyone's really surprised that Yuki is like top, at the very least, if not top one, like easily top three.
yeah. Um, no, I mean I think I'd the only thing I'd change on this is I think I'd move people like Sunny up a little bit, and uh, I think Sunny should be up there with Victor. Obviously, we don't have this on stream. You should post this a link to this in the description because it's horrible for us to be talking about something that is visually required on a podcast. But yeah, no, I don't think it's a big deal. In fact, I don't think it's a deal at all. Like I think a lot of players get sort of in like too high on themselves, and while I definitely speak with confidence and believe I'm right, because who would speak or yeah, I mean, who would speak about something or do something if they didn't think they were doing the right thing, right? Like humans obviously have a personal bias to some extent that the way they're playing or the thing they're doing or the thing they think is right. And I think I am a good player and competent and very, very capable of top aiding Canadian Nats 2 years in a row. I think I need to get lucky to do it. I think I got lucky last year because I didn't run into a lot of Zen mirrors and Zen beat everything else. And this year, I think I need to get lucky and continue to do reasonably well in draft while having my deck not crap itself up to top eight. And just like last year, where I sat down and I said, "Wow, it's six fangs and six Zens in top eight." This is if I was sitting there and like, man, if I win Canadian Nats and they're interviewing me, I'm going to have to sit down and say, I think I am equally as as deserving a winner as literally any other player in this top eight because this was just coin flip into coin flip into coin flip. And that may well be the case this year as well. We'll see what the top eight looks like. Hopefully, it'll be more diverse and a little bit more interesting. But you need to get lucky to win events. You need to get lucky to place well in events. Lots of good players, much, much better players than me, bomb events all the time. And this might be my turn. And if it's not, hopefully some people start to take notice. But I don't I don't need that. I'm happy if people just respect my opinion. I don't need them to think I'm the best player.
All right. So just to summarize, we have beef with Mask of Momentum. Don't.
Don't sleep on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
No.
figured we'd bring it up because I found it kind of funny.
Yeah. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Bring it up so long as you post a link for people
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see what
yeah, I
you're
got
talking
you.
about.
I'll throw the
Ideally
link
to
to
the
the
original
tweet.
post
Yeah.
so that you can actually get them the traction they deserve for
Yeah,
the
yeah, I'll
post.
just link the tweet in the description. It's totally fine. Alright.
Um,
Well, that was the last thing I wanted to bring up. You got anything else?
no, I think that's about it. I hope I do well at Nats. I hope anyone else watching, if you're waiting on playing your Nats or you're coming to Canadian Nats, I wish you guys good luck. We'll try to be back next week. Hopefully, I can start making more of my like new player learn to play content for Righteous Gaming next week as well. I've been very swamped with school and Nats prep, but I'll have time to write and produce another video. Hopefully next week we can get something for that. Yeah, and be on the lookout for that. Post another one of these Yap Fest low production value, low effort contents next week.
What do you mean?
And
We are trying so hard right now. I put a picture of a
I
card on the screen and we talked for like an hour and 15 minutes, Hunter. I can't imagine trying more than this.
I do want I want to address that really quickly. Actually, the point of this is not to be high effort content. The point of this is me and Zach like yapping, and maybe somewhere in some insane person in the world likes listening to people yap, and that's all it is. This is not intended to grow into some super professional high production value podcast. We might do high production value stuff on this channel at some point, but me and Zach are like heavily inspired by 4 hour yap fests. as far as podcasts are concerned, and we just like talking.
Dude, my favorite kind of content is literally just like four people sitting in a room doing nothing while talking about nonsense.
Yeah,
It's like
and
we need to get like Subway Surfers or something on the screen, you know, like, to really complete this.
that's the not the Subway Surfers part, but the platonic ideal of the podcast is just talking about nonsense that is fab related. It's been a lot more focused, I think, over the last 2 weeks because it's been Nats, but hopefully going
Don't
forward,
worry,
it's just
we
gonna
will run
be
out of things that are productive to talk
we
about.
will run
We
out of
will run out
important
of
things to
productive
talk
things
about.
to
It's like,
talk about.
so how was your day? So I saw a duck.
Dude, the other day I was like driving to an event and all these geese were in the road and I had to like stop for like 3 minutes. It was so fucking annoying.
I hope you're ready because the third trying to end the podcast tangent has begun.
All
Uh,
right. Anyway, I'm clicking
okay,
the button. It's not gonna
okay.
begin. All right. See
Bye
you guys
bye.
next week. Bye.